there, it's been a minute since the last episode of the Planet LP podcast. My name is Ted Asregadoo, your host of this endeavor. I hope you're doing well in this age of flux and ague. Hey, look up that phrase and you'll see the cruelty of it all. Speaking of which, I've reached my 6th decade of being on planet Earth, and because it's a milestone birthday, my lovely wife gifted me a trip down to Pasadena, California to experience the Cruel World Festival. And that was on May 17th. I'm recording this on May 25th. As longtime Planet LP listeners know, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. LA, even though it's in the same state I live in, is a world away. And just so you know, the last time I was in Los Angeles was after 2001. This is after George W. Bush refunded Americans money as part of the Economic Growth and Tax Relief Reconciliation Act of 2001. That's easy for me to say. And because I'm married, we got like a $600 check. So we took the blood money and we went down to Los Angeles with our then young daughter to Disneyland. Yeah, that was the last time I was in LA. So flash forward 24 years later, my wife and I ventured down to the Southland for the Cruel World Festival. It was my first music festival ever. There were a couple of bands I really wanted to see. And as I mentioned, the Big 6-0 happened. And my wife wanted to do something she knew I would like. So there, I'm old, but I got to feel the thrill of live music in a place I've never been to. But I also got to reconnect with a friend I've known, I think, since 1998, when we were both younger and working very hard on our graduate degrees and eventually start our careers in academia. His name is John Maschino, and he's probably a bigger music fan than I am. We met up at the Cruel World Festival and saw a few bands with my wife. He stayed with us for a few bands. And so that's what the topic of this episode is, a review or reaction to what we experienced in Pasadena, California at the Cruel World Festival. But before I bring John in to the conversation, I want to let you know that Planet LP will continue, but on a different schedule. Instead of doing a couple of episodes per month, I'm going to do a handful of episodes each season. So we're on the back nine of spring right now. So there's going to be a handful of episodes for the spring season, and then a handful of episodes for the summer, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. If you remember that shampoo commercial from the 70s and 80s, you'll get my reference there. So with that, now that we're clear on what the pod's going to be doing from here on out, let's start this thing up. John Maschino, welcome to the Planet LP podcast.
Hey, Ted. Good to see you again. It had been quite a few years, and
a little bit. Yeah, I think I had more hair back then.
I'm still doing okay in that regard, but it's gotten a little grayer.
Yes, the hair color has gotten different a little bit. Yeah. So, as I said in my intro, I wanted to talk about our experience at the Cruel World Festival. This is not your first time at this festival. It's been going on for a few years, I believe, and you've been to more than one. So is it more than two? More than three? I don't know. How many times have you been?
If I'm counting correctly, yeah, 3. I think I'm 3 for 4, which in baseball terms is I'm doing pretty well. Actually, I'm having a good day.
You're doing all right. Yeah.
Hey, sorry. First, just to finish that thought, it was really great to see you again and like in person and, after all these years and like actually like physical, like the hug thing and all that. And to see,
I know.
And now here it is only a week later and I get to see you again. So I think we're on a good streak. But I also just have to say it was really cool to be able to celebrate your birthday with you, especially a milestone one. That's not lost on me. So happy birthday again.
Thank you. Yeah.
I feel really honored.
One person at work said, "You're 60? Boy, you wear it well." I said, "Oh, thank you. Thank you very much."
I do.
Hey, at least I don't have cognitive decline yet, right? There's no cognitive decline yet. At least I'm not aware of it. And even if I was having cognitive decline, I probably wouldn't be aware of it. So that's a good thing, right? Yeah. So tell me what you thought about the festival in general.
Yeah.
What'd you think?
Well, you're right.
Compared to years past.
I guess, maybe just kind of take you back to the beginning. It had been quite a few years since I had been to a festival like this, and I had quite a few years actually, and I had really, sort of come to a place where it's like I'm not going to do these things anymore. I sort of lost interest in that kind of way of seeing live music. But then when the first one happened, and it wasn't really on my radar too much, and I heard that Bauhaus was playing, so that definitely got my attention. We'll have to talk about that for sure. But I wasn't planning to go, and it was expensive, and I was I'm a teacher, so I was at the very end of the school year, and I'm super busy, and I just couldn't, and just literally a few days before that show. So this is, I guess, 4 years ago now, I think.
Okay. All right.
A friend of mine, I ran into right at the end of a work day, said, "Hey, I've actually got an extra ticket for Cruel World this weekend. A friend of mine can't go. Money's not a concern for her. She doesn't want any money for it. She just wants somebody to enjoy the experience. I can give you a ride up there and back with my friends and so forth." And yeah, I happened to be in this particular place in my life where I was like sort of looking for some adventure, and I'd been through some changes in my life, and I was like, why not? Let's do it. And Bauhaus is playing, so yeah, I'm in. So
was this the first time they had played together in that time? I know that they had broken up a long time ago, and then fractured into solo work and Love and Rockets and things like that. But I can't remember if this was the festival or the time when they got back together.
Yeah, I mean, it was really something. Unless I'm mistaken, right? They had not played together for a very long time, and like you said, Love and Rockets and some other Tones on Tail and whatnot, other iterations. Peter Murphy doing his own stuff. And the kind of sweet spot when they were happening. For I think people of our generation, like a lot of us were just a little bit too young to have caught that. I have a couple of friends who are a little older than us who had seen them.
Right.
But I knew it just seemed it came out of the woodwork like that week. Like I discovered that I had a lot of other friends that were all sort of in this place of I just missed them. They kind of broke right when I was about, 14, 15, 16 years old and kind of ready to go do something like that. I think the Cruel World Festival was the first time that they were playing together. I might be wrong about that. I'd have to double check, but it's certainly one of the first. And then they went.
But it was an opportunity for you to see them. That was the big thing. Is like you missed it. Now you're not going to miss it this time.
I'm not going to miss it this time. And I almost did miss it. It was just serendipitous that this friend of mine happened to hand me this ticket. I was like, okay, and I think if Bauhaus hadn't been playing, I probably would have been like, I don't know if I can really pull this off. But that was definitely the kicker for me. It's like that I can't miss this.
Yeah.
And and then they did a limited tour after that, and I was getting like these messages or social media stuff from friends like up in the Bay Area or whatever who had just seen them, and so we were all on the same page. Just like this was like the band that I've been waiting 40 years to see, and didn't think I ever would. And it happened, and it absolutely delivered. I mean, I went in with very high expectations, and they were exceeded, actually.
I have never, like I said, I've never been to a festival before where it's an all-day event and it's laid out. For those that don't know, it's next to the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. There's a golf course, and they put like 3 stages, and you have to shuttle back and forth between on this golf course. They have a lot of food, like tents and food trucks there. So there's plenty to eat. There's plenty to buy, and it's all overpriced. But Pasadena, like many places in the world, experiences volatile weather swings. And one year they said it was like 108 degrees out there, and this time it was cloudy and rainy.
Yeah.
So it rained on us. So it was really weird.
Having been there several times now, I've gotten each end of it, right? That first time it was close to 100 degrees.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And, all day long, just like trucking around. And fortunately, some friends of mine had found one of the few shady spots in the park and kind of set up a little camp there. So we were able to go back to that and recalibrate and so forth. And then I was at the fateful one. It's sort of become infamous now where, Iggy Pop was halfway through his set And all of a sudden, this huge like thing went up on the big screens, uh, about like some emergency alert, and the music just suddenly stopped, right? And everyone in the crowd was like, is this part of the act?
Yeah, right, right.
Doing some weird kind of thing to throw us off, and murmuring and whatnot. And it's like, no, actually, something's going on, right? It turned out that it was like some weather advisory that they were worried about, kind of hurricane.
Was it like lightning? There was a lightning storm
Yeah,
coming in. Was that it? What it was?
they were worried about that, and obviously electrical,
Yeah.
shortages and things of that nature. So, for safety purposes, they had to shut it down. So Iggy's set was shut down halfway through, and then Susie and the Banshees were supposed to play after. Or actually wasn't with the Banshees, just Susie. But anyway,
Now let's get to the actual festival that you and I attended. We went and we saw Midge Ure was the first performer. Now, for those who may not know the name, he fronted a band called Ultravox that, honestly, they were kind of underrated in the United States. They did well in their native UK, but in the US, it was sort of
yeah,
like Ultravox. Who are they? And it was sort of an outlier band that would get played on maybe college radio. If you're down in Los Angeles, there's a station called K Rock. They probably played Ultravox. If you're down in San Diego, 91X, big alternative station down there, probably played Ultravox. And then if you were up in the Bay Area at the time, there was a couple of stations. One was called The Quake and Live 105. So those would have been the ones that where Ultravox would have been played. And you may have seen the videos on MTV. But I think that Midge Ure's biggest claim to fame is that he co-wrote the song that seems to never go away called "Do They Know It's Christmas," which was part of the Live Aid benefit to do famine relief in Ethiopia. But it just gets played to death. And I think some people really appreciated the sentiment back when it was originally written because it was kind of novel. But now I think people have reached sort of maximum I'm done with this song at some level too. But yes, he co-wrote that. But he came out and it was just him and a keyboard player, and he did a pretty solid set. Now, I've been listening to Ultravox since the 80s, so I know this guy can sing way up there. Like his range is up there. It starts, I think, maybe like in the C range, it feels like, and he can belt it. And this Midge is now 71 years old, and he can still hit those notes. And that, my friends, was incredibly impressive. So, were you also impressed by his performance, or am I just like, oh no, Ted, you're living off in La La Land because you clearly have cognitive decline because I saw something completely different?
there were a number of acts that I saw in this particular festival, this version that you and I saw, where I wasn't really all that familiar with the back catalog of the artists, with a couple of exceptions like Devo or whatever. But I was in high school and college, basically from 81 to 90, right? So I was like right there in the sweet spot of the whole 80s thing, whatever that meant, right? I could go through a laundry list of all the incredible acts that I saw and the music that I was into and so on. And then I could go through a laundry list of all the things I missed, right? And, like Ultravox, for example, right, was one of these bands that I knew about and, kind of knew like a couple of songs, but, really sort of missed out on, right, to some extent. And, I had a stepsister who, became like a really kind of major figure in the underground punk scene in New York City. Bands like Agnostic Front and Nausea, she was the front person in Nausea, actually.
Can you mention her name, or would she be offended
Amy
that you
Kime,
did?
yeah, is her name.
I'm sorry.
Amy Kime. And her father married my mother, and I remember like the first time I met her, actually, I think I was like 16, and she shows up and she had this like magnificent mohawk, and she was about to move to New York City, and
Yeah.
and I just remember like my mother at some point, I don't mean to be outing my stepsister here. Sorry, Amy, if you're listening to this. My mother showed me this letter that she had written to her father that I don't remember all the contents of the letter, but it was sort of like, this is why I have to move to New York and like find myself in this particular path and all of that. And she quoted Ultravox in that letter.
Hmm.
I want to, kind of include these lyrics here to sort of express how I'm feeling. So
I have a clip from the festival, and it is the Ultravox song Vienna, which a favorite of most people who like this band. It could be a misheard lyric. He said of a Fleetwood Mac song called Rhiannon. Everybody knows that song. He also said he never really explained like what the song is about. He thought it was from a film. And he said, well, it might have been from the film The Third Man. And then he said, it could be about a brief affair that I had. So whatever this song is about, it's very emotional. So let's take a listen and a watch.
Freezing breath on the window pane, lying and waiting. A man in the dark in a picture frame, so mystic and so full. A voice reaching out in a piercing cry, it stays with you until
thoughts about what you saw. This is the replay of what we experienced. I thought he hit those notes pretty well.
Yeah. I mean, I think, kind of more broadly, another thing that I've really been reflecting on with this is seeing these bands now that, they're older than you. And I mean, here we started this episode by celebrating your 60th birthday, right? I'm getting close to that myself.
Right.
And, we're seeing these artists who are 10 years older than us, right? And they're still bringing it. I just find that to be, really quite amazing.
One of the newer bands that we went and we trudged across the golf course, not for the first time on that day, was Nation of Language. You said they were a revelation. For those who don't know, Nation of Language was formed in 2016, so they're a fairly new-ish band. It consists of Richard Devaney on lead vocals, Aidan Noel, she's on backing vocals and synthesizer, and Alex McKay plays bass. They are inspired, as they say, from the krautrock genre, like Kraftwerk. But to me, they sound like a mashup of Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark and the Smiths. So have a listen to this and a look at Nation of Language. This was the one where you said to me a couple of times, you were like, this is happening. I'm really digging this. You still digging their music?
Yeah, I thought they were remarkable. Depeche Mode also kind of, crossed my mind in terms of their sound.
Yeah, I should spike that one in, but a certain era of Depeche Mode, right?
Yeah,
the more synth
instead of them. And I guess they've spoken about that, that was like their direct, kind of influence in terms of putting their band together and their sound. There were a lot of comments around me, about kind of the Mick Jagger aspect of Ian, I'm forgetting his last name now, but
Devaney.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he just, he definitely had a stage presence. It was like, okay, you don't see this every day. So this is a band I'm going to check out. I listened to them on my drive back to San Diego the next day, checked out a couple of their albums, and I was like, all right, I'm a fan.
And they have a new song out that's pretty good. I'm kind of digging on that one.
And then they're coming to town here. Like I got back to town, I'd been listening to their music. It's like, I'm a fan now. I want to check these guys out. And the next day I get a notification that they're playing in San Diego in October. So I'm like, sweet, buying the ticket right now.
So Alison Moyet was there. Another underrated performer from the 80s. She fronted the synth bass band Yaz, or Yazoo, it was called at times, and then went on to have what I would say is an okay solo career. She's now 63 years old, came out with a rather goth-looking getup.
Yeah.
What's that?
And no live drummer.
No live drummer. Yeah, it was just her and some keyboard players. Yeah. So her set consisted of both her solo work and selections from Yaz, and I liked her performance. I thought that she had a couple stumbles, but it's a live setting. You're always going to stumble at some point. But overall, really quite enjoyable. So here's a snippet of her performance of Nobody's Diary that was featured on the 1983 album You and Me Both. Get the feels, as it were, when you're listening to the song? Because some people, this song means a lot to a lot of folks.
Yeah. And admittedly, she's sort of also in that category, like I described earlier, of Midge Ure and Ultravox, of like sort of the artists that were sort of there, all kind of around me when I was, growing up at the time, and hadn't really, latched onto for whatever reason. So I was really like compelled by. Again, it was like, like I know some of the major songs, right? But not so much the back catalog. So it was like a really cool way to, kind of explore that and really, get to know this artist at this particular stage and all that. So yeah, I enjoyed her performance. Yeah, it was, like you said, a couple stumbles here and there, but, again, artists that haven't performed maybe, all that much in recent years. And, but they were, it was great.
It was very enjoyable. I mean, I like watching the crowd because you can tell the super fans, they were just so like engrossed whenever a song that meant a lot to them was played. Only You was another one from the Yaz era. But the most anticipated for me was to see the reunion of Til Tuesday. Yeah. This is a band. This was the first time they had played together in about 35 years.
Yeah.
In this configuration, I think it's more like 40 because these were the original members from the first two albums. By the third album, I think just the drummer and Amy Mann were part of Til Tuesday, and then they filled it in with session players. But I got to say that, I've been a fan of both Til Tuesday and Amy Mann since the 80s and have been following Amy Mann's career I bought, when you bought records and CDs, I would buy every one of them that came out. So now you stream everything, but still, I still have all my physical discs, folks. But I never got to see this band live during their heyday. The last time I saw Amy Mann was, and I referenced George W. Bush in the intro, was the night of December 12th, 2000. That was the evening that the Supreme Court announced that in Bush v. Gore, that they were halting the recount in Florida, which basically threw the presidency to George W. Bush. It was Amy Mann. She was at the Fillmore in San Francisco, and she came out and she goes, "I've got some news for everybody. The Supreme Court just basically shot down any kind of recount in Florida. So looks like George W. Bush is going to be president. So let's just continue." So she announced it from the stage. But, this performance, like Alison Moyet, had a little bit of, they had some warbles at the beginning. Right. But for the most part, she turned in, the band I don't want to just say it's Amy Mann, but the whole band turned in a pretty solid performance. Her voice warmed up and she could kind of hit those notes. I was reading in the Hollywood Reporter an interview before we recorded this podcast episode, and it was before the actual festival. So they did a profile on her and asking her questions about what it was like to get the band back together after all these years. And she said, the thing was, is I went back and I had to re-listen to the old Till Tuesday catalog, and we were trying to figure out what songs we were going to play. And man, I was trying to sing along to myself from the 80s karaoke style. I'm all like, what was I doing back there? My voice would go super high and then it would go low, and it was just like all over the map. And she said it was a challenge and I think she's got to be like 65 now, 64, 65, somewhere around there. And she mostly sings in a lower register. She doesn't use that really high voice that she did with Till Tuesday. So they had to try to figure out a way that she could try to still get within close to that range. So, they call it tuning it down so it's in a different key. So they had to do things like that, but they played live in front of a select audience before they came out to Cruel World. And she said, I did that for a reason. She said, because there was no way we were going to rehearse this thing and I was going to go out in front of a festival audience and blow it. I had to get all the nervous energy out in a test run. So they did that.
Yeah.
I think it worked. I think that worked well. I'm glad that they did that. And I hope that they continue to maybe tour and maybe even write some songs together again and put out another Till Tuesday album.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it. I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a great set. I completely agree. And I know her, and, I don't think I'm as familiar with her solo career as you are. But I've followed it to some extent and heard interviews with her, over the years and things like that. And she just seems to be like one of those figures that has really carried the torch for a lot of the, sensibilities. Not only at that time, like you mentioned, that's a wild anecdote about December 12th, 2000.
Yeah, I know.
Really,
it just shows how much George W. Bush factored into my own personal history at times, right?
Right.
For all of us early.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, the good old days.
No. Yeah. Harbinger of what was to come, but she's just remained, this in her own niche, this really important voice, I think, really articulate and, just a real visionary and appreciating like that. She's just explored her own craft as a songwriter, I think going in a number of different directions. And yeah, so she's like, one of those, great kind of figures that maybe isn't like at the top end in terms of, most people just know them obviously for Voices Carry. And she even commented on that at the end when, it's like, you knew they were saving that song, as to wrap up the set. That was pretty obvious. And,
right.
And I'm sure, they're kind of thinking as a band, like, we got to do this song. Right. And her comment about like, well, this is the song that made us famous in airports around the world.
That was good. I have a clip of that. Let me just play that really quick.
This is a song that made us recognizable in airports all across America. Aren't you somebody? This is called Voices Carry.
She has some very funny stage banter.
Yeah.
She has a little bit of comic timing, even though her songs are traditionally very sad and, mopey. I made a mixtape years ago, just a compilation tape, not for anybody, but my own personal consumption. And it was all Amy Mann and Til Tuesday songs of the ones that I liked. And I titled it My Miserable Life. The music of Amy Mann.
That's great.
Oh my goodness. So I think at this point we had kind of parted ways. You went on to meet up with your friends, and Julie and I
Right.
bowed out of OMD because we were starving. So we went to get something to eat. But everybody kind of gave me a little bit of crap on social media about you walked out on OMD. How dare you? So sorry. I'm an old man. The dinner bell was ringing somewhere. It's like I needed to eat. I was really like, oh my God, I'm so hungry.
Yeah. Well, and
so I got to hear some of it. Did you stay for OMD? Did you, or did you leave?
For most of it, yeah. No, I mean, that's one of the things about these festivals, right? And they overlap things, so you have to make decisions, right? I can't see both of these bands that are playing at the same time, or whatever. Or I've got to, time it so that I catch the end of this set and the beginning of that one, or whatever. And so there was, like, you and I were pretty close, for some of those bands that we just talked about. Right. And then when OMD came on, I moved way to the back, so that I could kind of, and more people were starting to show up. It was getting more crowded by that point, and I knew I kind of wanted to move on, to some other things. So I saw them much more from a distance, and most of their set. I don't think I stayed quite till the end, but and then I got hungry and I had to take a break as well.
Yeah, I know. It's there's something about that. You're thinking like I got to make some choices here, but okay. My stomach is taking priority at this point. But we went to grab some food at one of the food trucks. I got to say, man, the prices for food and drink there is high.
Yeah.
I mean, Julie bought a glass of wine. I'm talking like a little plastic cup of wine.
$25 or something.
$19. $19. I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's like ballpark prices, and the food was just, it was like $25 and you didn't get a lot, but okay. So
I did have a good plate of street tacos. Actually, they were quite good.
You had the street tacos? Okay.
Tacos. They were great.
And do you remember what you paid?
Oh, probably. I'm sure it was around $25. I don't quite remember, but
yeah.
Somewhere around there. Yeah. But they were good.
So we were just sitting in an area where they had some picnic tables, and we were near one of the stages where the band She Wants Revenge was playing. And I only know one song of theirs, which is called Tear You Apart. I don't know anything else about the band or their catalog or anything like that. But I'm watching them. I'm thinking, holy shit, these guys are really good. I mean, they're good performers. They got a lot of energy. They sounded good. I was like, I kept looking at Julie. I said, we should, when we finish, maybe we should go down and check them out a little closer. And they had finished their set by the time before we finished eating. So we didn't get a chance to do that. But I caught a little snippet of Tear You Apart from my phone. So here's She Wants Revenge.
It was making him crazy. Now the little crush turned into a light. And now he wants to grab her by the hair and tell her, I want to hold you close. Skin pressed against me tight. But still, close your eyes, girl. So lovely, it feels so right. I want to hold you close. Soft breath, beating heart. As I whisper in your ear, I want to fucking tear you apart.
If they tour and come around to the Bay Area, I will go and see them because I really enjoyed their performance. I thought, wow, this is a band that kind of defied expectations. I used to describe their music. Somebody when I used to like the song "Tear You Apart," they would say, "Well, what's this band like?" I said, "Well, to me, it sounds like robots who want to kill you. That's what it sounds like." Listening to robots sing about how much they want to kill you. So, but that's not the case if you look at the way the band presents themselves. They're full on like rock. It's not like Not like Kraftwerk or something like that, but yeah.
Well, and I think
And then, did you watch Devo? Did you go see Devo?
I did see Devo. Yeah. Oh, yeah. They were, very much on my do not miss list.
Yeah, I've never seen them live before.
I,
I was blown away. I was just like, holy shit. These guys are 75 years old and they still bring it. You were talking about older performers in their 60s bringing it. Here's Devo. Some people would say, oh, that's just a one-hit wonder, but they're not. They have lots of hits. They have lots of great songs. So, and they were funny. I mean, I enjoyed everything. Their video, the whole presentation was so good.
yeah. It was very tight. Like, it's interesting. We were commenting on just how sometimes these live sets can be pretty sloppy in a venue like this. When you
Right.
everything's timed. It's like, I have to be off the stage by such and such time. We got to move quickly, and bands aren't necessarily always at their best. It's kind of more free flowing. Like, okay, it's a live festival thing, so you just kind of go in with that expectation, right? Devo was so tight, so on it, like the segues between tunes, like you didn't even have time to sort of stop and like catch your breath. It was like right into the next thing. They had the video stuff, kind of going, during that, so that there was just like no break in the action. You were just kind of constantly focused on, what they were kind of bringing to the fore. And so everything, the sound, everything about their performance was just absolutely top notch and just fun. I mean, they're one of the true, all times. I mean, I don't have to tell your listeners, how great Devo is, right? And I had seen them at Cruel World several years ago, actually.
Okay.
I've seen them at that festival, and the first time was also great. This one I thought was even better. It seemed even tighter. The first time through was more like a greatest hits kind of showcase, which is not that there's anything wrong with that, especially if you're Devo. I mean,
No.
sticking to the hit.
Yeah, they played some deep cuts on this one.
But they went deeper this time. Yeah.
They did. They did. And this is their last hurrah, right? They're done. They're retiring after this tour.
Yeah.
No more live music from Devo. Yeah, they're done.
Yeah.
But I figured if this is their last hurrah, what a way to go out. I caught a couple of the performances on my iPhone. Here's Whip It. And I want you to watch the screen carefully because there's some young teenage girls who are really into the song.
Correct, that'll win it. Give the pass a slip. Step on the red. Break your mama's back. When our problems come along, you with it. For the dreams are not too long. You with it. When something's going wrong, you with it. Now with it. In the shape. Shape it up. Get straight. Go forward. Move ahead. Can't you detect it? It's not too late. You whip it. Into shape. Shake it up. Get straight. Go forward. Move ahead. Can't you detect it? It's not too late. To whip it. Now whip it.
There it is. Devo, whip it good.
Yeah.
Dan, and you know what? You know what's interesting? Did you notice that the mix and the way they played was way more guitar and drum focused than the synth stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, this was like a full-on rock experience. I was like really like, holy shit, Devo's rocking it, man. These guys are good. I texted my friend John Young, who used to co-host this podcast when it first started. And I said, I was thinking about you, John, when Devo was playing, because he's a very guitar, sort of four on the floor rocker guy. And I said, oh my God, I kept thinking John would love this because it was just so guitar forward and the drums were like up there in the mix. It was just really punching you in the face in a good way. So yeah, Devo was great. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, they were.
Did you go over and see Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds? Did you catch his performance?
I didn't. Again, this was like one of these things like you got to make these choices with these festivals, and you can't do it.
Right.
And I think if my memory serves me right, it was sort of kind of between them and the Go-Go's, basically, like because they crossed over too much. And like I can really I can either see both of them from like very, very far back in the crowd, like go with that strategy of like kind of catch it this way and like, or really immerse myself. And, so like for Devo, the Go-Go's came on right after Devo, I think, if I remember right, but
Right,
on the
right.
same stage. So, Devo was like a must for me. So I got there pretty early. I got in pretty close. So I was not far back from the stage for them. And then I made a conscious choice at that point after they finished to just stick around because I really wanted to see the Go-Go's. That was actually really important to me for a lot of reasons. And so I got up even closer. So I was like, all right, I'm sacrificing, 15, 20 minutes of Nick Cave in order to really have the full immersive Go-Go's experience.
Yeah,
Choice
yeah.
I made.
So what we did is we split our time. We went to catch the first part of Nick Cave. His big song, or the one that I think most people recognize, is called Red Right Hand, which is a great song.
And from
After
the
that,
TV show, of course.
what's that?
From Peaky Blinders, right?
X-Files. But it was also on X-Files. It was on an X-Files soundtrack. Yeah. I have a couple of X-Files soundtracks, which is, I don't know why, probably because of the artists that they featured. But the Red Right Hand was featured on that. But yes, it was on Peaky Blinders as well. After that, I said, let's go catch the Go-Go's. But Nick, I got to say just real quick that Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, I've never seen them live at all. This guy, talk about a freaking preacher, just bringing the energy. He's working the crowd, and he should have headlined. New Order should have been the second to the last band, but Nick Cave should have closed out that festival because he was that good. So we did catch the back end of the Go-Go's last few songs. Let me ask you this. I heard some like them arguing in between songs. You were up close. Were they kind of pissed off at each other about some things?
I think they probably were. It was an interesting set. They again, like, these bands that are sort of, reforming after all these years. And Jane Wiedlin actually at one point said, if you had said a year ago that the Go-Go's would be playing a festival like this, it would have been like, no way. And here we are, and, so obviously, I don't know, is it burying the hatchet kind of thing or whatever it may be. You go through life and it's like you get older and, friendships mean what they are. And even if there were tensions in the past or whatever, I've been following, on Instagram, their this kind of recent mini tour that they've been doing, mostly California dates. And I was like, this looks like it's really happening. And they're like one of these bands for me that, like, I first heard them like we all did, around 1981 or so. I think I was a freshman.
Sure. Yeah. Beauty and the Beat comes out. And
and just, I was like, what is this? It was like this, this pop punk kind of stuff that you couldn't not hear because it was everywhere. Right. And, I was sort of like writing them off at the time, like, oh, is this cool or whatever, because you're 15 years old and that's how you think. But it stuck with me. It's like, deep somewhere it was like, these are really great songs. Right. And then I realized, later that they really had these punk roots that, were sort of like stripped down somewhat, in the studio recordings that they made. And so it was really clear to me that, like, in this kind of reunion thing that they've been doing, that they were really kind of going back to that sound a lot, especially with the guitar sound in particular. And
it was much more shrill in terms of the aggressiveness the guitar. I know that Julie was plugging her ear. She was all like, "This mix is killing me," and we were standing way in the back, and so she was like, "It's painful to listen to in a way that it's just, it was just where we were standing. I guess we were catching like that higher end of that shrillness." But you mentioned that Jane Wiedlin said that they, you asked them like a year ago whether they would have played a festival like this. Right. She also noted that they've been together for 47 years in that lineup, and not many people can, not many bands can brag about that.
Right. Right.
But of course, they did the right thing in closing out the set with their biggest hit. which is, We Got the Beat.
Right.
So let's have a little listen to that. So lots of lights, lots of fun. I think that there was a lot of visual feasts for folks and to get the energy up. But did the crowd feel like that they were really into it? Because at one point, Gina Shock basically said, "You guys aren't dancing, and I'm working my fucking ass up here. Come on."
Yeah, there were some odd moments like that.
Right,
So
right.
to me, for where I sat, they or stood, they sounded awesome. Um, and they came out like kind of there's no business like show business, and they were doing this, uh, uh, kind of cabaret thing coming out, and they were all dressed to the nines, and you know, uh, and it's so they came out. It seemed like they really wanted to be there, and they were really excited. And I know like this tour, I think has been a really big thing for them, and there's been a lot of really positive feedback and so forth. And I think as the show kind of went on, like there were some funky moments. Like there were a few weird things that happened in the crowd right around me. Like there was somebody near me who was clearly had a little too much fun, let's say, and was kind of pissing some people off, and had to be sort of get out of here. And and that hadn't happened yet. So I think that was just serendipitous. It happened to be at that moment, but it was like a little strange that it like happened, right in this moment where it seemed like there was some tension with the band. And then, yeah, Gina Shock's, comment about that, was a little off-putting, admittedly. And it
It seemed like she wasn't very appreciative of the audience. I was like, "Come on, just
yeah,
relax. Let's have fun with
and
it."
you mentioned like they ended with the hits, right? And there were a few people we were talking about, like the kind of age, the demographics of the thing. There were a few people in front of me who were, a third of our age at the most. And when those hits came on, they were dancing, I mean, they were
Yeah.
into it, right? And
Something about those songs, right? Yeah.
yeah, and so and Jane Weedland commented at one point, she said, "This is sloppy, but we're good," you know. And it was like, yeah, it was sloppy. There were some missed notes here and there, and like a couple times I was like, did they just play the wrong note? And things like that. But and like Belinda had some issues with her mic, and that seemed to kind of piss her off in the moment. And there were a couple. Yeah, at one point, I
Mhm.
remember like Belinda was like, what are we doing here? Like they were all playing the wrong song or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
their
yeah.
set was not tight in that respect, like the way Devo's were.
Not as tight as Devo,
Devo
for certainly. No, Devo was
like
like,
super
you know,
professional. Uh,
right, yeah.
But again, it was like warts and all, right? It's a festival. They haven't really played that much together for a very long time, and they're here and they're doing it. And again, they're like 67 years old and just totally killing it. And just the stage presence, the way they were all dressed. Um, so I loved it, and despite the warts.
Maybe it's the physical proximity to the
Yeah,
stage has something to do with it because we were way in the back and just thought they were good. It was fine. And I think maybe we were just away from the energy center, as it were, from the audience.
yeah,
Because what you experienced and what I experienced were a little bit different. I mean, I liked it; it was good,
yeah.
but I wasn't feeling it as the way in which you did and others around you. So even the drunk guy. So I don't know. Yeah.
He had this vape, and he was trying to get everybody to like toke on his vape.
Oh,
Everyone was like, "I don't go away," It's like you're too fucked up on
oh
vape at
my
this
god!
point, or something. I don't know what it was.
Did you stay for New Order's entire set?
I did, yes.
Can I confess
Sure,
something?
yeah, please.
I bowed out after 3 songs. I couldn't. I was so
Yeah,
exhausted. I couldn't do it anymore. So, and I said, and they started out with some songs that were deeper cuts, and I thought if they're going to come out of the gate strong, great, we'll stay. And then as we're making our way towards our car, we heard a song that I really love, which is "Regret." And I was like, "Oh!" And Julie said, "They're playing your song, honey." I was like, "I know, I can hear it all the way out." But yeah,
yeah.
so, but you stayed for the whole thing. So what did you
I
think?
stayed for the whole thing, and by the way, that you may have been gone by this point, but they actually, you don't get encores at festivals, right? But they actually
Right,
did come
right.
back out, after they
Really?
stayed at the
Okay.
very end when people were leaving, and they played "Love Will Tear Us Apart."
Oh, right. Yeah,
Yeah,
nice.
it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
that, and I was heading towards the exits actually by that point, but I stopped and turned around. I was like, "Oh no, I'm staying for this." New Order is New Order, right? I mean, they're just uh, one of the just consummate, bands of any era, right? I mean, they're one of what can you say, right? I mean, they're just so good at what they do. They're such amazing musicians. Their set was the kind that really was going to appeal no matter where you were because just the way it
Right.
was dark by this
Right.
point. The light show was great. I mean, it was a fantastic set. Yeah, and like you said, they did go for some deeper cuts, and then of course they, um, obviously like Blue Monday and the tunes like that, which they kind of saved more towards later in the set.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was just solid throughout. I think they can't do anything wrong, basically. um,
So I've seen the Order a couple of times. This is I think my third time seeing them. So the first time I saw them was in 1989. The album out at that point I think was called Technique. We went to see them at Shoreline Amphitheater in Mountain View. Public Image Limited was there, and Sugar Cubes opened. Sugar Cubes were not that good.
oh,
Public Image was great, and New Order was the headliner, and I'm sorry to say, even though we were super fans back then, we walked out because they were just not doing a good job.
wow,
And then we flash forward, we saw them, I think it was 2010, somewhere around there. And we were at the Bill Graham in San Francisco, and they were amazing.
mm,
They were just great. It's just everything about the whole performance was
yeah,
so good.
yeah,
This one had started out good, but I was just physically exhausted. I couldn't stay any longer. So I felt a little bad, but even Julie said, "I'm glad you said,
yeah,
you're tapping out
yeah,
because I feel the same way." Before we started recording, I think we had said that the thing about these festivals are a bit like buffets, right? You're just given all this stuff and you're gorging on these things that you think, more chocolate pudding, or I'm going to have a roast beef, or I'm going to whatever. And then after a while, you kind of reach your max and you can't eat anymore. And that's kind of how I felt. I mean, I was looking at the lineup. I'm like, I wish I could take it all in, but I mean, there's only so much. You got to make choices, and then you also have to look at your own ability to, stay for the entire day. Had I come later in the day, I would have stayed for New Order's entire set, But I really wanted to see Till Tuesday. That was the draw for me.
mhm.
And then everything else was like a bonus.
Yeah. So,
All right, John, this was fun. Thanks for, kind of reminiscing about
yeah,
this,
yeah,
this festival. My first, not your first. You're, like I said, you're a huge music fan. I think you kind of came away with, it seems like the emotional energy that you were receiving from the performers really kind of like resonated with you. I was much more, well, they have a little pitchy there, "Hey, you didn't hit that note there," or something.
right. Yeah, yeah,
Sorry, performers who are in my background here. I'm glad that you were out there. I caught the last song that Garbage did. I caught part of Push It, but I've seen them live before, so I didn't feel like I'd missed out much.
yeah.
So thanks for being on the Planet LP podcast.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I've really enjoyed this, and just since the festival, of course, has been rolling through my head a lot, and uh, so to be able to kind of get into that a little bit deeper with you here has really been quite enjoyable. And like these things always, I'll walk away from this like, oh, I wish I had said this, or that anecdote. There's probably going to be a dozen of those easily. But
Right.
that's the beauty of it, right? It's sort of a gift that keeps on giving. And uh, I love that these bands from our youth are doing that. And
Me
um,
too.
uh, so yeah, we'll see what next year's lineup looks like. And I don't know how much longer I can continue to do these things, but hopefully, my family just moved really close to that area near the Rose Bowl, so that makes it really convenient. I have a couch to go crash on very easily, so I kind of have no
It's good.
excuse, um, other than the price of the ticket, I guess, which is that's its own issue. But
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see what's on tap for next year, and maybe we can meet up there again. That would be
Okay.
or
I hope so.
one of my journeys north to the Bay Area. And see you soon. And happy birthday.
Thank you very much. And thank you for watching and listening to the Planet LP podcast. I will be back very soon with another episode right here. Thanks again. Bye.